Greetings and welcome to another episode of Pop's Collection. I'm Ron Tweedy. Joining me is Pops, and today we're going to be discussing 1993's Menace the Menace.
From my comic strip collection.
Right.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Hope you have your coffee. Do you have your coffee, Ron? Are you ready?
Yep.
Good deal. The QT cup.
Right.
That's cool. Hey, if they got some flavor that you like, it's all good.
Yep.
So, yes, 1993, released on June 25th.
Right.
Had a budget of $35 million and made over triple that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was highly successful as far as people going to the movies to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I neglected to check the rating on it, but I'm going to guess it was PG.
Yeah, it was.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It actually might even be rated G. It's really mild when it comes to that.
Well, yes, but we got to remember too, that's 1993.
Sure.
What would be considered maybe PG-13 back then would be considered mild today, maybe.
No, I don't know.
Well, anyways, Menace the Menace. It's I probably don't know if we could find anybody that has not seen Menace the Menace in the Sunday papers.
Well, I mean, that presupposes that anybody actually reads Sunday papers anymore.
That is true. That is true. But I don't know. I would assume that if you looked at it on the computer, that you probably could look at the comic strips on the computer too.
Yeah.
If maybe they would have a Sunday Funnies thing.
Sure.
Menace the Menace, based off a comic strip by Hank Ketchum.
That's right.
Actually from 1951.
Right.
And do you know the story about how that all came to be?
Yeah, well, I know he started out as he wanted to be an animator, so he worked with Disney for a lot of stuff prior to World War II. Then World War II happens. He gets drafted into the Navy. He does a couple of propaganda cartoons for them. And then post-war is kind of where he gets the idea with Dennis, with essentially his child being a, typical child. And
a 5-year-old, and
right.
His son actually is named Dennis.
Right, exactly. And apparently, according to him, he got the idea from his wife, who called him a menace. So
yes, he said that I guess they had a spare bedroom that he made his office, and she
right.
came in and slammed her hand down and said, "Your son is a menace."
Right.
And ding dong,
right.
That supposedly that's how it started.
Right.
Of course, with this movie and with the TV series that happened back in the 60s, actually 59, 4 seasons they had. And then they also had a cartoon show.
Yeah. So that's kind of the one where my first entree into it, I guess. That and the 50s, because you had the cartoon, which, Phil Hartman voicing Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Classic Phil Hartman.
I've got you now, you flapping fluffball. Oh no, my prize-winning petunia.
And then you have, like you said, the 50s show that was ran a bunch of times at Nickelodeon during the early days. So, watching that, you kind of see that and Lassie kind of back to back a lot.
Nickelodeon presents tips from Dennis. The first tip, how to escape a sticky situation.
We have to hurry home for dinner.
Tip number 2, how to get a free snack.
Every time I play my horn, somebody gives me something to put in my mouth.
And tip number 3, how to be a menace in your own home.
If at first you don't succeed, try again.
Any tips for grown-ups, Dennis?
Remember, big people don't cry.
Listen to Dennis. If you've got problems,
I'll solve them for you.
Dennis the Menace on Nickelodeon.
So...
Well, and that from that era too. What I enjoyed about rewatching them, I've got them on DVD. Things that maybe you wouldn't understand because of the vocabulary of the time. Some of the jokes that were jokes You would only know that they were jokes by the canned humor, because of things that they might have said that pertain just to that era, know, that nowadays, like for instance, if somebody from the past were to watch a show and they mention beepers, they'd have no idea what that is or what cell phones are, somebody from the past. So like that, when somebody called, you had a phone in the kitchen that hung on the wall.
Right.
Which they also did in this particular movie, which was the first of actually 3 movies that they came out with. But this one, Dennis is played by a young actor named Mason Gamble, who actually, instead of being 5 or 5.5, he was actually 6 when he did the motion picture. But as a father of a 5-year-old, I think you could probably understand the acting and the innocence of the way that, in this case, Dennis was, and the things that he said and the good intentions, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a little bit of an evolution of the character, because the original comic, Hank Ketchum, really wrote Dennis as kind of like a jerk, one of the kids that are just up to no good. And over the years, it softened quite a bit. And by the time the 50s TV show rolled around, he was fully into the well-intentioned but messy kid. Essentially, that's what it ends up being. So there's that.
Yes, and actually, Mr. Wilson didn't arrive on the comic strip team till like 3 years after he started it.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, the film did good. It did over 117 million worldwide.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the people behind it, obviously, as John Hughes, he's a legend as far as I'm concerned. He's one of probably the greatest filmmakers of all time. And him writing this and kind of being a producer on it, I think has a lot to do with its success. Not only that, but also being able to attract the acting talent that, besides Mason Gamble, you have a lot of star power to this, whether it's Leah Thompson as Miss
Alice.
Alice, or Walter Matthau as Mr. Wilson, which to me that was like I didn't really watch a lot or Walter Matthau stuff beforehand. Obviously, Bad News Bears was before my time. And the closest thing that I got to that was season 1, Homer Simpson, because that's what Dan Castellaneta said he based the voice off of in season 1 was Homer Simpson as a Walter Matthau type character. You kind of can tell.
Well, good night, son.
Dad?
Yeah?
What is the mind? Is it just a system of impulses, or is it something tangible?
Relax. What is mind? No matter. What is matter? Never mind.
Thanks, Dad.
Good night, son.
Yes.
So you have that, but then you also have Christopher Lloyd as the bad guy in this.
Switchblade Sam.
Yeah, I didn't even realize he even had a name. But anyway, you have that, and I think a lot of that has to do with the success of the film. You got that. So you have one of the greatest writers writing for it, and then you have some good actors really playing into their role, because Christopher Lloyd, I think he plays it best when he's playing a bad guy, like the Klingon officer in Star Trek 3, or the voice of the bad guy in, what was that, DuckTales movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp.
Oh, yes. So, yeah. Well, that's the funny thing about it, but the way that they made him up, there was a lot of conversation with, because they really promoted this thing well. And Mason Gamble, who plays Dennis, is a good personality. He was asked if Christopher Lloyd had scared him. And he goes, no, he says, because I saw him before they put the makeup on him.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the Cleon officer. I totally, when I saw the teeth,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wow, he's almost full Cleon, you know?
Yeah.
But did a good job. They actually had an actress in there, Jeannie Russell, who played a neighbor. There's a neighbor in there that has red hair.
Okay.
And she was actually the actress who played Margaret for the TV series from 59 till for the 4 seasons.
Interesting.
So she got an opportunity to be there. And we also got Ben Stein in a little, I guess you would call small. Cameo.
Yeah, that's definitely a cameo.
Position, you know, as the boss. You know, this movie everywhere was called Dennis the Menace, except for in the UK.
Right, because they have a different Dennis the Menace. It's a different comic strip. It's like it's really weird.
It's part of a children's magazine that they call the Beano.
Yeah. It's like it's like a mirror universe Dennis the Menace. It's really weird. Like
yes, it is. It is. And that comic actually in the UK has been around since the 30s.
Oh, okay.
So interestingly enough, you've got Hank Ketchum coming up with Dennis the Menace, and then there is one. So, you know, I guess someone could say that he could have yoked it from them, but a totally different character. So probably not.
Yeah. And the fact that is like actual flesh and blood child is named Dennis. I mean, you know, I doubt they would have named him after the comic character from the UK. It just seems, that wouldn't.
Right. So. Interestingly enough, though, that character, although he has black hair,
right,
he does have uses a slingshot.
Right.
You know, so which we got some of that in this movie.
Very little. It's like in there for like the beginning and then no more, because I think that was a way to keep the PG rating. I'm sure if he kept the slingshot the whole time, he probably would have gotten a higher rating.
Well, he did when he was a hostage.
Yeah,
he shot the slingshot too.
Right.
But you're right, not very many times.
Right.
And actually on the TV series, the only time that he had it in his pocket was in the pilot episode. They made him take it out after that. Exactly.
Yeah. 50s TV was very heavily censored in that way. And we do it. I think we should say something about, you know, the performance of Jay North as Dennis from the 50s TV series. Unfortunately, it came out a little bit later in the 1980s that actually he was the victim of some abuse with his on-set guardians, which were like his aunt and uncle. And, you know, he kind of, you know, held on to that for a long time. And, you know, it's one of those things where you don't hear enough about, but, you know, despite all that, you couldn't really tell in the performance. And so it's like, it's kind of a bummer thing, but, you know, I'm glad that he was able to at least tell a story, you know, and to get some help for that.
Right. And he did get over it. And I believe that he got into producing and some directing as an adult. So,
right.
You know, I really enjoyed this movie, but the critics, not so much.
Yeah.
You know, they tried to say, I think they tried to make the point that it was a Home Alone wannabe, you know.
Well, I guess, I mean, you have a precocious blonde boy, you know, making mischief. I mean, that certainly the two films do have in common, and both of them also shared a John Hughes pedigree. I mean, the only thing really missing is a role for John Candy, which, I think he passed away by this time, so he couldn't even do that. So.
Okay. Yeah, I guess. All right. But we did also get Buzz in this movie.
Right, right.
So I guess maybe that could be why I think that the, what would you call them? The pranks, or not really pranks, but the different stunts that they used, totally different as far as the reasons for them. And, in Home Alone, we got that he's protecting his house from the robber.
Yeah.
Where in this case, he doesn't even know that the guy he's with, Switchblade Sam, is the robber till,
right,
close to the end of the movie. And he doesn't really have a lot to do with it. I think the story is more about Mr. Wilson and Dennis, and how their relationship develops.
Sure.
More than anything else.
Although you kind of could see a similarity between Kevin and Old Man Marley in Home Alone.
That is true, but that's something that they didn't really develop too much in Home Alone. But you're right. I think it got developed a lot more here because, Kevin was afraid of him.
Right.
Whereas Dennis thinks Mr. Wilson as his best friend.
Right. And Mr. Wilson
is
afraid.
Very much.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's totally opposite.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of cool at the beginning. It makes me so nostalgic when I see a bicycle with playing cards in the wheels as a motor.
Sure.
We used to do that all the time,
Mm-hmm.
Now what he did it with the straw in the front. I never did that. I guess I may have to go to my second childhood and get a bicycle and maybe try it and see how that works out.
Okay.
But I think in the beginning, what we saw was Mr. Wilson afraid. He didn't want to be anywhere near Dennis.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say that particular idea is something that, we see a lot, your mom and I, especially if we go to the senior center.
Sure.
There are some seniors there that really don't want to have anything to do with children. They have this idea that if they were parents, they've already raised their kids and they're done and that's it. We actually, sadly, know some seniors there that have not had an opportunity to see their children or their grandchildren, and are not really interested in doing that.
Yeah.
Which I find very sad, because I think that we see towards the end of this movie that it's important as an older person to share our knowledge and our lives with younger people. I think that we need them as much as they would need us.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, obviously, it's a I think what makes it different is that you have older people who are set in their ways, and when you don't have the familial bond there, it's difficult to do. Grandchildren is a different dynamic than neighbor kids, right? So
yes,
I
they
think
are.
That has a lot to do with it, and that to me is, I think, kind of the dynamic that you're looking at there. The fact is that it's revealed later on in the film that the Wilsons never had any children, and for whatever reason, it's not really specified, but the fact is that when you don't have the children or grandchildren on your own, other people's kids, it's like, it's not the same thing. Like I noticed now with older folks, when they get the grandchildren finally, there's this period of time where their kids are grown up and they get married and everything like that, and there's automatically some expectation, I'll say, for grandchildren. Pressure is probably a little bit too severe of a word, but I think expectation is there, and that does change things a lot. So I think that's what the difference is.
Well, I think also too that sometimes it can be pressure, or even portrayed as pressure or perceived as pressure.
Sure.
But there, I see the value because you have blessed your mom and me with grandchildren.
Yeah.
I see that value, and I feel that there are older people that miss out on a opportunity to share their stories and their life that could be something that a younger person could learn from or glean from, possibly certain things.
Yeah.
Knowledge and wisdom that is beyond, it's priceless,
Well, I think even to complicate it a little bit further, I think there's also a dynamic of, an older person being so set in their ways that, introducing a kid into the mix messes up with the ways that they want things to be. And it's just that element of chaos that they're not used to. It makes them chafe against it. And I think that there are some grandparents out there who are well-meaning, but get too easily frustrated at children when they, come in and they just, kind of wreak havoc, which children are wont to do.
Which is true. And it's totally normal and innocent.
Sometimes it is. There are some kids out there who, are mean-spirited, and they need to be they need to have a firmer hand of discipline with them. But generally speaking, you're correct that it's not ill-intentioned at all. It's just them being kids and not picking up on social cues or whatever, because they're learning still.
Right. And I thought that was an interesting sequence in the movie where Walter was, or Mr. Wilson was looking at his coins.
Yeah.
And Dennis is in there with him, asking him all kinds of questions.
Right.
And he's like, why do you ask so many questions? He says, well, I've only been around for 5 years. I got a lot of things I got to learn, know?
Right.
Which is kind of the truth,
Right.
There's only so many things. But I thought it was another funny point in there when he asks him the combination of the safe, and then he tells him what it is, and he's like, his eyes light up like, not so smart, am I?
Yeah.
But I did notice that in this movie too, because it's like, okay, we have to get ready for the the meeting for the flower, oh my gosh, the garden club,
right?
Which we do have certain things that we do, like this we do on Monday, this we do on Tuesday, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that that's okay, as long as you don't, if you have a hiccup for some reason and something else happens, or, that you don't get all bent out of shape if things have to change, for any reason.
Yeah.
I think it's important the older you get that you like things to be a certain way, but if something happens that's unexpected, I think it should be something that you embrace to the point of, well, it's an adventure. Yeah. Or something,
Well, I mean, and you kind of have to remember what the life story is up until this point for George Wilson, is that, he's a World War II veteran, worked at the post office after he got out, like all his life for decades. So, walking the same route, delivering the same mail to the same places or whatever, so routine is a big part of who he is. And then after he's retired, all he does is he's obsessed with his garden. And so, again, the fact that he invested 40 years for this one plant, to kind of think. So like that to me is, I think that's what it is. It's just, he has these expectations of how things should be. And when they don't turn out, it's, you know, basically his level of control gets disrupted. He realizes how little out of control that he is, and he doesn't like it.
Well, yeah, I guess you could kind of say it's almost like the same investment or a bigger investment than my investment in my DVD collection. You know?
Yeah. Well, and then that's the other thing is that the investment that he has in that flower is so fleeting, right? I mean, you got, you know, maybe 3-5 seconds of, you know, the flower blooming, you know, whereas your DVD
and then
collection,
it dies.
Your DVD collection will last a little bit longer than that.
Yes, that is true,
but not much longer.
And you are right. I actually was moving some things around a couple of weeks ago, and I have a DVD, which is a comic strip called Spy Smasher, and it was a serial. And I was moving the case. I picked up the case, and it like just shattered in my hands. It just broke. The DVD case, and I'm like, what? I mean, I have other DVD cases, but the fact that here is a DVD that the case is destroyed and I did nothing other than pick it up. So, like you said, it's not going to last forever.
Right.
You know, it's just something to keep me busy, I guess. And it gives us lots of things to talk about.
Sure.
So, so we had the stunt with the first stunt, I guess, was him being sick in bed. And we get the shooting of the aspirin into his mouth.
Right.
Which on the DVD, they had an extra. They actually had like a huge, humongous pair of dentures.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They had a making of with a couple of things like that on TV as kind of like a promotional thing to tie into the film. I remember seeing that on television, back in the day. So,
yeah. So that was kind of an interesting stunt. Then you got the stunt with the teeth, which is your mom's favorite.
Yeah.
The dentures.
Right.
And I could see that because the last time that I was up there and I had to take my teeth out, Piper wanted to see me take my teeth out. You know? So I hope you didn't show her the movie, did you?
No, she saw it.
Oh no. I guess I better be careful with my dentures.
She wasn't paying too much attention to it, so I don't think she saw that part. I don't remember.
Oh, good. Well, I don't want to have to do a show with two chiclets in the front of my...
Yeah. Well, I do know, I'm trying to think, there was that old couple that was in charge of the garden club. They've been in a number of other they've been in another number of John Hughes films as well. So I know they were in Home Alone and they were in a couple other ones as well. So that again, like it goes back to the fact.
He's a good character actor from way back.
Sure.
And the photographer too.
Yeah. Yep.
Was in quite a few different things.
Well, I remember most about, he did a number of commercials for like medicine, like Alka-Seltzer or whatever back in the day, like very distinctive voice.
Oh, plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. Yes, I remember that. But again, the casting was done real well in this film.
Yeah.
And I think they did a good job for the budget that they had for the film.
Yeah.
Definitely. To think that he was one of 20,000 kid actors to get that part was something pretty incredible. But I think it was Hughes that actually decided to go with him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So definitely that was interesting. We also had Paul Winfield playing the police chief.
That's right.
And when I saw the thing about the Home Alone thing, I thought that could have, if you just saw the end of it where he was the hostage.
Yeah.
that to me did seem, the gags seem like a lot like the Home Alone. Here's the firewood. That was kind of a lot like actually like Home Alone 2, pretty much, But again, something that if he threw it that far, Christopher Lloyd would have been dead, close to it, so but a lot of good gags there. Let's see. Oh, and somewhat, I guess, with the times, the garage door opener, the way that it opened, instead of going up, those kind of gags probably, wouldn't work today, At least I don't know if that's still the way they do garage doors, or if there's some that are set like that.
Yeah, I'm sure older houses still have that.
Got to be a real old house, though. Yeah. I'm gonna have to say.
Yeah.
All right. So, favorite part of the movie for you?
I don't know if I have a favorite part. I do think it's interesting. So, I mean, you obviously have intellectual property that, you have a eternal 5-year-old from the 1950s, right? And you're trying to portray the film. It's not set in the 50s. It's set, I think, modern times is probably more accurate.
Well, yes, because you have both parents working, which back in the 50s,
that's what I was.
Happen.
That's where I was going. So it's kind of a different take on it, and I think the film actually does have an interesting amount to say about gender roles and how it's kind of a reflection of how things have changed since the 1950s. I mean, you have obviously the two parents working thing, which to me, is, it definitely complicates things, as kind of the big plot point, the fact that they're both going to be out of town on work, and he has to stay with the Wilsons, and so that's where a lot of the trouble seems to ensue. And then the other part of it is you have some interesting conversations with Margaret, and the just kind of how boys and girls are different and everything like that. And all I will say about that, because there seems to be a lot of confusion about those things, is that in this film the 5-year-olds get it, right? And they just kind of know it intuitively, and they know it from the little experience they have, that the truth of Genesis 1:26 and 27. God created male and female in his image, and his image he created them. The 5-year-olds know this, and we would be good to remind ourselves of that from time to time, that God is the creator of male and female. They're different. They're both equal in the image of God, but they are distinct and different, and that is a good thing.
Oh, yes.
So,
yes. And we did kind of get a little bit of a slight of that with a female co-worker who didn't have children,
right,
and thought that, oh my gosh, too bad for you, have to take care of your child,
right,
I've got other things to do, so I can't help you out, and you wonder if it's jealousy or if it's just the fact that they want to be single in their own way.
Yeah, and she gets her own comeuppance at the very end, which is fine.
I love that. Again, another innocent point where he's so curious that he's gonna push that button. He wants to push the button on the copier, and he's only there because the lady in the child care department said she was going to jump out the window if he stayed there any longer. So,
that's right.
Which Do you ever remember a work facility or some kind of place where they had offered childcare to their employees?
I've heard of it. I know that I think one of the hospitals that are in the area, I think they offer on-site daycare for children. And I want to say that there's a place in North Carolina, I forget which, it's a larger company, it might be SAP, where they also have on-site daycare. So it's not unheard of, you know, and my opinion on that has evolved quite dramatically over the past year and a half or so, that, you know, children should be around their parents while they're working. I like that the fact that, you know, there's a separation between parents and children when it comes to the things that happen during the day. I think is something that we've lost over the past 100 years or so.
Yes, true. And I think that I think your children, what your mom and I did when we decided to have children, for her staying home to be there,
right?
That was at that time not something that was very common.
True.
You know, so we went against the grain to do that, but we feel that you and your brothers got a better upbringing because of that.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think that if that was a situation with both of us having to work, it wouldn't be worth it unless there was an opportunity for childcare there and an opportunity to be with you during the day, you know?
Right. Well, that's the thing. I think that, you know, obviously we're in a novel situation now with both parents working, but I also would say that the 50s was also a novel situation where the mom was just, you know, stay-at-home mom and not necessarily doing any work outside the home. I think that's also a novel thing. But, you know, I think the idea is that, you know, it's not like stay-at-home moms aren't working. They are, but the work they do is household centric. You know, so, you know, obviously I don't want to kind of toot my own horn here, but, you know, the fact that my wife runs a small business out of the home, like the business is at the home, you know, so she's able to stay home with the kids, but she's also working in some ways, is a model that I think is, dare I say, biblical, that, you know, the wife and mother being, you know, everything kind of being home centric.
Yes. Proverbs 31 woman.
Right. Exactly.
You know, I think that because there's a lot said in those Proverbs about her making clothes and, you know, selling them.
Sure.
And so, I mean, that could go perfectly hand in hand.
Right. The work is there, but it's the framework of the work is within, it's coming out of what's happening inside the home.
Right. And the way that you can work around the times, because let's face it, your children, if you're not homeschooling them, they're at school. So there's opportunities to do things outside the house and not, you know, lose time with your children.
Sure.
You know, so I can remember my mother, who unfortunately, because of her being a single parent, had to work.
Right.
However, she still did things on the side. Back there used to be this thing. There was this board. It almost looked like a surfboard and had legs, and you had this hot thing called an iron.
Right.
And people used to iron your clothes so that they were nice and starchy, and they had spray starch, and I can remember my mother used to do ironing on the side to make extra money. She would do it for like 10 cents a piece,
Right.
And people would bring their laundry and she would iron them all, hang them up,
Yeah. Right.
But she was able to do that in order to help support us and take care of us because my father's lack of support.
Right.
So even back then, I could see that as being something that maybe a mother would do on the side in order to help out the household or just to help somebody else out,
Sure.
Because it was a whole different dynamic back in those days, as far as how people treated each other.
Sure.
And the neighbors, the one thing that I really loved in this movie, if you recall, the hide and seek thing with Gunther.
Sure.
And Mr. Wilson saying that he was like an ace at hide and seek back in the day,
Right.
Which, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I am a pretty good hider, know?
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that is something that even to this day, kids play,
Sure.
It's probably something that's been played forever,
Yeah. I do think that scene actually is kind of brilliant in that, you have Mr. Wilson kind of being this, he pretends like he doesn't care.
Yes.
And then he goes ahead and screws with Dennis about, trying to even the odds. And it's like, I think it's
like he's cheating. He's cheating.
It's hilarious. That's probably one of my favorite parts is just him, messing with Dennis and also at the expense of Gunther and messing with him too, which is kind of, yeah.
Yes. Well, and I think that particular scene or gag, the whole part of that really showed the neighborhood dynamics at the time.
Yeah.
Which when I saw that, it reminded me of the time that we lived in Margate and us and the other parents would sit underneath the tree and watch all you kids play in the road together.
Right.
All different ages.
Yep.
Girls and boys together. It was just,
Sure.
And I think that's missing a lot from today. I know in your neighborhood you have a few.
Yeah, it depends on the year. We've had kids come and go, but it's the same. It depends on the sometimes we had a whole mess of kids. A lot of times we don't. It's just one of those things where you don't have a whole lot of control over that. And it's, I don't know. There's a pretty good book called Bowling Alone that kind of talks about how, as just neighborhood, the culture in of itself has not been as social as it used to be, and part of that I think has been designed by some certain political parties to create division. But the other part of it is just, it's just one of the side effects of modernity. How we could easily engage in things that are artificially social, and the way houses are built reflect that. We don't have a whole lot of houses that have large front porches anymore, and so people don't hang out outside anymore.
No, and that's true. And as you recall, when we lived in Margate, that somebody had actually built those benches around the large tree,
right?
As a meeting area.
Sure.
Which again, you have your neighbors that you guys hang out with or come to when the kids come out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you do have some opportunity to that, but I think the dynamic that was in that movie was more towards the way it used to be.
Sure.
That Although they did have a friend that came all the way from around the other block, around the other side of the street.
Yeah.
When you guys were there. So, I mean, that was somewhat like it on a small scale.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
I think that was definitely worth it. I think that's highly missed.
Yeah.
So what else do you want to talk about with this?
That's all I got. I think like I said, the interesting, almost simplistic take on gender, and also the changing times. Those were the two things that I got out of it this time around.
Right. And it's funny how we say that, sadly, you mentioned The Simpsons to get the Walter Matthau idea. And I'm going to have to say Bart is another dentist. He never gets older. I mean, how old is Bart?
Yeah. 10. He's 10.
10. So he's been 10 for
30 years.
30 something years.
Yeah.
Yeah. He should be a father by now. A grandfather, no less, probably.
You're probably right about that. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to recommend to our listeners, if you haven't seen, take a gander at it. It's a good laugh. It's entertaining. It's very light. I don't think you're going to have any nightmares with it, unless you have a little trouble with the Christopher Lloyd character.
Or if you're an old person and, the thought of someone having a neighbor like Dennis would be disturbing to you.
Right. But if you're an old person like that, I'm going to say, get over yourself. We need young people in our lives.
I think that's a very, very wise thing for you to say.
Yes, it is, because like I said before, we are set in our ways, but we're not so set in our ways that if something knocks us out of it, or we do something different, that we don't, have to go to the hospital for heart failure because we're not on our regular schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, watch it, you'll enjoy it. How do you feel about rating it?
I don't know. I mean, it's certainly, I think, a well done film. And like I said, I think the acting, the casting, that was all done very well. Is it a masterpiece? Is this some sort of highbrow, fancy film that has a ton of meaning in it? No, but that's not what it's supposed to be anyway. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd say probably it's for who did it, who's behind it, and who's in it. I think it probably deserves an 8. For what it is.
I think that's a very good sign.
Yeah.
Again, like you said, for what it is supposed to be. Remember, it comes from the funny papers.
It's a good point.
So it was definitely funny. And Hank Ketchum is definitely, he was good about bringing out the fun in the innocence. And, we got to see again in the funnies how Dennis might get a little timeout in the chair for something that he thinks totally innocent. So I'm going to match you and say an 8 also.
Okay.
Definitely worth seeing.
Okay, cool.
All right. Well, and again, there are 2 other movies with 2 different Mr. Wilsons, Robert Wagner and Don Rickles.
Oh,
Which
okay.
Don-
Yeah. All right. I know the other one you're talking about, the older one that was it was almost like a straight to video type of a film
Yes.
about
Yes.
It was like a dinosaur something. It was, yeah, I remember seeing
Yes.
that vaguely, like a long
Yes,
time
but
ago.
there was another one, I think the Robert Wagner one was a Christmas one,
Okay.
but Don Rickles is another guy that can be a pretty cantankerous old man. So
Yeah. Well, obviously his iconic performance as Mr. Potato Head is
yes,
indicated.
definitely. Yeah. But if you'd like to watch them, I'm going to say that they're not as good as this one.
No.
Not even close. But
Right.
if you decide to get into checking out Dennis the Menace, you could check them out.
Okay.
But I could tell you honestly, we are not going to do any reviews on them.
I'm good with that.
Are you good with that?
Heck yeah.
I thought you would be.
All right. Good deal. All right. Thank you all.
Okay, good.
Thank you all for joining us again for another episode of Pop's Collection. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave us a comment, give us a rating on iTunes, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye and God bless.
Goodbye. God bless. And tell your friends.